Imagine buying a car without ever taking it for a test drive. You would never do it. Yet every week people ask me, well, how long should I try hearing aids for? Or I have 7 days to make a decision if these hearing aids are the right ones for me. Now, here's the problem with that. A hearing aid trial isn't just about, well, do I like these devices? Or do these hearing aids help me? It's actually about determining, are these the right solution for your hearing, for your lifestyle, and for your brain? And if you don't understand how hearing aid trials are supposed to work, you can make the wrong decision. And that could be you returning hearing aids that could have worked brilliant for you, or keeping a pair of hearing aids that were just never programmed in the first place. So let's clear up the confusion. My name is Dario Coletta. I'm an audiologist and doctor of audiology, and I've helped hundreds of people in the Toronto area to achieve better hearing and solve complex cases of hearing loss. So today, let's dive in and really understand the purpose of a hearing aid trial. Now, before we jump in, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel. Now, I want to start with one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear, and I hear it a lot. I tried hearing aids once and they didn't work for me. Now, when someone says that to me, this is the first question that I always ask. First question I always ask is, well, tell me more about this trial that you did, because often the answer to this question is going to tell me exactly everything that I need to know. Sometimes they wore them for 2 days. Sometimes they wore them only at home. And sometimes they wore them in the clinic for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes nobody adjusted them after the initial fitting. And sometimes they were fit with a hearing aid that wasn't even appropriate for them. That's not really a hearing aid trial. That's like meeting somebody for 5 minutes and wondering, are you going to be lifelong friends with this person? Now, a hearing aid trial isn't just about testing out the hearing aid. You're testing the relationship. And I want you to think about that for a second. Now, of course, the hearing aid matters, but equally just as important, was it programmed correctly? Was it comfortable? Did my audiologist listen to my feedback? Were any adjustments made during follow-ups? And were my expectations of hearing aids realistic? Those are all part of a hearing aid trial. I mean, a hearing aid is not working in isolation. A hearing aid trial or wearing hearing aids is part of a rehabilitation process. Now, here's something that surprises a lot of people. Your ears don't actually understand sound. Your brain does. If you've had an untreated hearing loss for years, your brain has basically been receiving less sound information than it should be. And then when we start wearing hearing aids, then suddenly, one day, your brain is hearing the hum of the refrigerator, the hum of the air conditioner, squeaky hardwood floors, your footsteps, your keys jingling, of course, flushing the toilet, going to the bathroom, putting a dish in the sink. Those all sound different. And many people think that, well, the hearing aids are making sounds too loud. And many people think that, oh, no, these hearing aids are making sounds too loud. Not the case. That's not necessarily the case. Those sounds have always been there. But with a hearing loss, you're either missing those sounds completely or you're not hearing them in the way that they're meant to be heard. I mean, one of the first things people always come back and say is, I walked out the clinic door and I could hear the birds. Or I got in my car to drive home and I forgot my turn signal makes a clicking sound. One time yet, I had a woman come back and say, I had no idea my brake pads had worn out because every time I hit the brake pedal, they squealed. Now, those sounds have probably always been there, but your brain had not been really paying attention to them purely because they were missing them altogether or not hearing them in the way that they were meant to be heard. Now your brain is relearning to hear all of these sounds. I mean, it's called acclimatization, and it's a natural process, but it takes time. Now, one mistake I see people doing is trying to judge hearing aids, sometimes based on the first 10-15 minutes of wearing them, but also the first few days. And this is sometimes why we don't do a lot of hearing aid trials in clinic, aside from the fact that it may not be the style of hearing aid you like, sometimes what your initial reaction to wearing a hearing aid is very different than what your reaction to that hearing aid is going to be in 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month. So often I want people to take an appropriate hearing aid home that we've worked together to pick as to what we think is going to be the best fit, and giving your brain the chance to get used to it. Judging how hearing aids work within the first few days is like joining a gym on a Monday and expecting to have a six-pack by Friday. It's just unrealistic. Your first week is about becoming comfortable hearing all of these things that you're not used to. Our goal is not reaching perfection right away. You should really expect that some things are gonna seem unusual. I usually tell people your first couple of days, your first week of hearing aids, gonna be a little bit of a bizarre experience because what you have been used to as your normal is very different than your experience of normal wearing hearing aids. Now, with that said, your experience of what is normal becomes more natural over time. And it's not because the hearing aids are doing anything differently than they are on day one, but your brain is more accustomed to the sound and is better able to understand, well, what do I want to hear? What don't I want to hear? Instead of in the past, we're just missing. Background sounds may seem more noticeable. Sometimes conversation may still be a bit difficult, but none of these necessarily mean something's wrong. It's just part of the process. Everywhere. Seriously, I want you to wear your hearing aids everywhere. Well, except for sleeping and maybe bathing or going for a swim. But otherwise, everywhere. If you only wear a hearing aid when you think you need to wear a hearing aid, or you only wear a hearing aid when you go for dinner once a week, that's not enough time for your brain to get used to it. Sure, going out for dinner, maybe wearing your hearing aids, you're gonna probably have a bit of an easier time having a conversation, but all of that background noise probably still going to interfere. Whereas if you had been wearing them all day, every day, your brain's more used to it. It's a more natural experience, especially in more challenging scenarios. If you can wear a hearing aid as much as possible, that is going to set you up for success. Now, not everybody can do that. Sometimes we have to wean people through the process of starting to get used to their hearing aid. And so maybe that's starting at home, and then we go out to a quiet lunch with a few friends, and then maybe a bit of a noisier cafe, and then a little bit of a larger family gathering, and then to a noisy restaurant. Part of your hearing aid trial is working with your audiologist or a hearing healthcare provider to understand what's the best process for you. Some people can jump right in and go for it, and some people we need to take a slower amount of time while remembering that we need to be realistic in how our experience of our hearing aids is going to be. One of the most useful things patients can do during the trial period is keep notes. Now, I don't think you need to come in with a full notebook and just pages and pages of notes, but some simple observations are great. Now, I usually ask people to do, well, where has my hearing aid been really helping me? And these can be examples of things like, I was able to hear my granddaughter more clearly, or I was able to sit and watch TV with my partner and we could sit and listen at the same volume comfortably. Nobody was complaining about it being too loud or too quiet. I also want people to take notes of maybe where your hearing aids have helped, but you're still struggling. And that can be something like, I struggled at lunch with 4 of my friends, or I went out for dinner with my spouse and I still had a difficult time.